Welcome.
Welcome. This is Listen.
Teacher Chatter.
This is Robin.
And Jill.
And listen, we are so excited. This is our first time to have a 2-part.
Well, that's a lie because we did that with Bauman, but.
Well, we did. Oh, did we break it to 2 parts?
Yeah.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So this is the second time.
Okay, the second time.
But we also had to record that like numerous times.
We did that like 8 times.
Yeah, so it kind of goes together. But this is part 2 of our episode with my sisters, Kelli Cheek, and
Laine Towe.
Yep. And we're still going over the benefits of being in education. We think it's so important that we need to have 2 episodes.
That's right.
Yes.
When you fly these people in, we do not want to just rush them.
Yes.
So that's why.
Absolutely. Robin, can you think of any like benefits that maybe people don't realize?
You know, I think when it comes down to just the reward that we get out of it, I don't think people realize, most people that get into it, it's because it's really a calling. And I know we talk about, and I know, I do think, I feel like, now it's going to get ugly in this conversation maybe, but I feel like this new generation that's coming, some of them are not called to be teachers. I think it's more of just, I don't know. I think this generation they don't know what to do. Yeah. So, okay, I'm a girl, I'm going to go into education, I'm going to do it. But you could tell it when you walk in those classrooms. It's not a calling, and it's too hard. Our job is hard. We have to balance so many things. Like we thought, you're a counselor, you're a
nurse,
you're a parent, you're a decision maker, you're an aunt, you're like all these different things that you have to do and teach academics, and you have to turn in your grades, and you have to do all these things. And I do worry, and because I know one of our questions is like, why don't people go into it? But I do worry about this next generation. Now, I'm telling you, I've seen some amazing student teachers and brand new teachers that I feel like they truly do have a calling to be a teacher. Yeah. But I think for me is when you really are called to do it, it's a ministry, and that you have a chance to make a difference. And so many little things just keep, and we say we're bucket fillers, but your bucket's filled constantly with little things that you wouldn't even realize through the day. And I think that's the benefits, is that you feel so rewarded when you leave.
Yeah. I think one of the things because I had made some notes on some questions, and I think how I worded it was many of the benefits are more of the heart, not financially.
Yes. Yes. I think that's perfect.
Yeah. Because it's more of the heart.
Yes. I think that is, I think that's perfect how to say it, is that it does so much, and it does fill your heart, and it makes you happy.
And I think, like, for me, of course, I live in the rural area. So a lot of, I'm to the point now in education where I teach with some of my former students, which is hard to learn to call them by their misses. But so that's been fun to get to teach with some of the kids I actually taught, but also, I am now, so I'm seeing some of the people come back and raise their kids. And I'm starting to see some of those things, and that is very fulfilling. Yes. It really is. And for them to say, I had one tell me the other day, you haven't aged. And I said, oh, I love you. I don't look close, but those kind of things, to hear them tell the stories. You mentioned earlier, it's not the lessons. They didn't go back and say, hey, remember the lesson you taught us on this main idea is really inspiring. They'll say, remember the time that, and so those things are what I love to hear. Those are things that remind you. And I think sometimes God gives a time for those things to come around when you need them the most. Yes. You're like really struggling, like, why? Whoa, this is rough. And then somebody pops in and says, hey, remember the time you did this? And then you're like, okay, this is why I'm doing it. This is what I needed to hear today.
I just, being in the library, it's kind of a different this year, just because I get to inspire kids to read books and but also I get to make so many relationships with all the kids. So it's great because, it's all the time you're talking to kids about their lives, and you can just kind of have a step back moment with them. And I'm hoping that, some kids just need someone to pay attention to them. Yeah. Like, you're a mom, you're all right, you're a mom, you're an aunt, you're a nurse, you're everything. Yeah. And I've been called all that. Grandma. So it's like, it's throughout the whole your life, you get to be all kinds of stuff for people, and I used to tell my student teacher, I said, I used to teach in a little bit lower income, and I said, just remember that you might be the only consistent person they see throughout the year. And so you have to give them love and tell them I love you, no matter if they're the stinky kids that are on, they need the most love. So when they come in, you say, I love you, you give them a hug. and go on. That's the only thing they're, they consistently have today is you. And she's like, I didn't think about that. And I said, academics, sometimes you push aside and you go with
it's not
that.
your most important job.
Right. It's not. It's telling those kids that you love them and go on, because, and I know some of those kids that I used to have that, and probably still have, that no one ever told them they loved them except you. And so it's like, and they kind of look at you weird.
They do.
But then it's funny because then they're like, oh, I love you too. You know, like, and then they go on and they just, and so I think that's like a benefit to me, is like, you know what, if I can just show love to somebody, 100%. And it is a blessing from God. Like that's,
it is.
It's a, you're a blessing to them. They're a blessing to you. I mean,
and I think that's the part where it comes back to, like, what other profession do you get that part? You know, like where it's to your heart. And I think, again, my pastor the other day when we were talking about this was saying about how it's a calling, but like it is your ministry and the blessing you get to be to other people. And none of us went into it thinking we're going to be rich at the end of it, but we knew that there was some other blessing and richness that we would be fulfilling within it.
So, I was thinking about that this morning, like, God calls you to, like, this is my ministry. Like, I didn't, sometimes I don't think of it like that. I was like, oh, like, this is my ministry, going into teaching, like what I get to do, like, is a blessing to people. And
I recently heard our elementary principal tell our students, he had a Polar Express thing right before Christmas break, and he was talking to them. He dressed up as a conductor, and of course they were excited. They got to wear their pajamas and everything. And he said to them, why did we do this? We did this because, he said, your teachers, they stayed after school and worked hard to make this happen. He said, they did this because they love you. We love you. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I was like, knowing that some kids have never heard that, to hear. And let's talk about a little bit about a man standing in front telling 100%. that, and that was a neat thing to hear. And those kids were just, eating up every word, that he was saying. So, and I, people sometimes are hesitant to say those things.
Yeah, it is. But it means everything.
It does.
Well, and Abby has a friend, my oldest, and she was saying Maddie had came out, my youngest had came up to give her something. She dropped out the thing, and Maddie's like, I love you. And she's like, I love you too. And the friend said, that's so weird. And this person comes from a great family, but he said, our family just doesn't say I love you all the time. And I think sometimes we don't realize that even great families, when you come up from a family that we're huggers and we say I love you all the time and we don't think anything of it. But there is a lot of families that, even good families, that never hear those words that are so important, that they need to hear that they're loved. You know what I mean? And because it is those hard families sometimes that is, but there's also good families that still need to hear that they're loved. It doesn't mean they're not loved, but they need to hear those words.
There's power in, we talk about the power of words and the power of looking at somebody and saying, I love you. Yeah. There really is that. And I noticed, like, I'm not the teacher that's like, oh, you're the hug big time. And I've not ever really been that teacher, but I will tell you, in the last 2 or 3 years, I am intentional with some of that stuff, because we've again had kids that have been isolated and haven't had that interaction. And so even me just putting an arm around a kid, I had a kid that was a little bit of a stinker right before break and had to have let's say, like, some time away from the classroom. Had to have some time, and nothing from what he did in my room. But when he came back, I just hugged on him and I said, I have missed you. And I was like, and I'm so glad that you're back. And I said, and I also hope that you learned from what happened. That's right. And he's like, I have, Mrs. Weedle. But it was that, like, when he saw me, he knew, like, there was like, yes, I'm disappointed in your actions, but I still care about you, and I don't think they always get that.
And I think something that I never thought of is, when I got into education, like thinking about being irritated at a kid, like I would be like, the young me was like, I don't know that I could forgive a kid for acting that way. But man, how quickly in my years of education did I surprised myself. That ornery kid that I still get phone calls from, and he's in his 30s. Yes. He, ornery. Oh my gosh, he would make me so mad. And in 5 minutes could make me turn around and laugh. Yep. Yes. And so there was that, I guess I would have thought I would have held on to that, being irritated a little bit longer, but you love them. And so you quickly, and I didn't even have kids then, to like, but you pick up and you go on and you're okay with they're an 11-year-old kid that made a mistake. And so you're like, I'm good with that. Move on from that. And, I learned that about myself. I surprised myself in being able to move on from that little ornery kid that made me mad in class. And I, reprimanded him but I was able to move on from that. And that was something that surprised me about myself.
I would say, one of my hardest, like, kids that I'd probably get on to the most were the kids that I was like their favorite teacher, and I was like, I come on to you all the time. But I think also I got on to him and I showed him like, hey, this is how you probably should have handled it, and gave them some skills, even at 6 and 7. But then also showed him, I still love you. And I think that made the big difference, was that you didn't get mad at him and stay mad or yelled at him. I'm like, I'm not, we're just going to talk this out. And those kids still come and give me hugs.
Oh yeah.
And they're probably more the ones that give me hugs now, which I am not the hugging type. Everybody would know that in my family. Just not. And I didn't realize that until I got an education. And one of my teacher's friend goes, "Don't hug Laine." Like, and I was like, what? He's like, "You're just not the hugging type." But I am with kids. I mean, that's just how they need that love. Now, as an adult, I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah, we can see you later.
And that is how I knew not to be an elementary teacher. Was they all wanted to hug me, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, you hug them even with slobber and sun.
Yes, listen, that's good loving.
Robin's all in there. Get snot on your shirt. It's good stuff. Well, and some of the things you guys are bringing up made me think about like the tools that God gives you when you don't think you have them. Yeah, because I've had years where I have dealt with kids that have had the craziest of things, and somehow like God was able to give me like I kept coming back to him saying like, look at them like I look at them, Jill. And I, as a human, I'm like, oh my gosh, fix this or whatever it may be. But in the same, I was like, God loves this kid no matter what. And it was like he gave you patience and all the different things that go along with it.
I need a Kleenex.
You need Kleenex. It's okay.
Over there.
I mean, don't cry though.
We're not gonna hug you, okay?
Yeah, it's all right.
I mean, I might when I leave, but
it'll be
quick.
okay.
Yeah, Robin's a great hugger. It'll be great. Oh man. Okay, that
one. Why do you think less people are going into education?
I don't know. I've thought I don't know the best answer for that. I mean, I thought of a lot of different things.
I just think teaching is hard. It's a hard skill to have, that you have the loving side of it, but you also have to have a really good worth ethic. I mean, like you're working, people don't realize how much you work extra. Like, and that's not because sometimes it is because you're minister, because you want the best for kids. Yeah, right. So you want to make sure everything's lined out for them for the week or whatever it is. So you work that extra little bit all the time. And I feel like sometimes, as you talk about the newer age, they don't understand how much work you have to put in it.
Well, and even if you're not really working, your mind you're worried about, like you just talked about, making that connection with that kid. Talking about my credit recovery kids. How am I going to get them to pass their classes? Like I'm constantly thinking about what I can do, what I can do to help make that situation better. But I also, something that did come up when I was thinking about this last night, was what do you hear about with education right now is on the TV and stuff. I mean, there is not a lot of positivity going on in there. And I'm not going to say that I'm always 100% positive about it either. There are days that, the last few years have been very tough.
But in any job, you're going to go through that,
but probably not publicized like it has been. You have school shootings, you have, either the COVID stuff you've dealt with, you have the
parents,
the parents,
administrators,
you have the the different situations with the online schooling, our teachers, are they able to get what they need just by taking classes online? I mean, that's something that's coming up. So there's things like that are just hard to, if you don't have an in with a teacher or to have somebody to talk to, if you're just an outsider looking in, then why would you choose this profession that the media is telling you it's not there, people, it's not the fun spot. And then knowing people saying, oh, you're not making a lot of money. So I see that part as part of it.
Well, and I honestly think the responsibility of a teacher is so much. And honestly, I really do not like to get on the thing as like, we don't make enough money, because I always feel like you go to education, you knew when we went in. But for everything we do, we don't get paid. What you could go work at Chick-fil-A as a manager and make probably close to, what I mean? I mean, you have to be, but not have that stress. I mean, you have your own stress, but I think when it comes down to it, there's two, I think about, my husband works in the medical field, and I think of the jobs that come up, and I'm like, man, like I could just go and be that, and I wouldn't be rewarding because it's not what I'm called to be. But I think if you're not called to do it and your heart's not in it, there's so many more options. It's not as hard as teaching.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think that's why people are not getting into it, because if your heart's not, because I'm with you, anytime I have a student teacher or a practical
Mm-hmm.
student, I said, listen, if you love this job and it's what you're called to do, it will be the best job you ever have.
Yeah.
But if it's not, get out.
Yeah,
I told him, I said, don't, because it's hard. And there's days I go home exhausted and thinking, man, should I even stay in there? And, looking at retirement, I'm thinking, you know what? In 6 years, I'm out of here, and I would never think I would be that way, but it has changed so much that I do think that way. So I think it has to be a frame of mind that it is a ministry. And if not, these people don't want to stay in it if they come,
I mean, you brought up Chick-fil-A. I actually am currently working with a guy who is a Chick-fil-A manager, and this is his first year of teaching. He got out of Chick-fil-A world.
Oh, well, maybe we need to have him on here.
Yeah. He is a character, let me tell you. But I was asking him the other day about like the difference, and he's like, actually, I feel like I have, in his opinion, he had more downtime because as a teacher than he did as a manager, because I'm sure people wouldn't come in, and there's always like, it's always
having to fix problems, right?
And
in
a manager,
right, in the position
versus a teacher.
Yeah.
Well, and it's just like anything else. It's perspective. Until you've walked in their shoes, you have no idea.
100%.
Right. With any job.
Yep, definitely. So what do we think could be done to help in the educational world? Like to show people like the benefits, I guess, with it all. I mean, clearly them listening to our podcast would help with that.
Yes.
Well, I think one of the things you're talking about with the media, media has a huge, it's a huge outlet for everything. I mean, even your Facebook and your social media kind of stuff. And I think because it's been so hard, it's been easy to be negative about stuff. And I feel like a lot of times you see more even negative posts from teachers than the positive stuff with it. And so as a group, I'm like, we need to put out there the great things. I had actually from your neck of the woods, one of your, I guess she's actually the counselor, isn't she?
One of my former students.
One of your former students. She's the elementary counselor, but she had put up a beautiful story basically about one of her former teachers had flat tire or something. Car broke down or something, and she picked her up.
Yes, yeah. And she picked her up. Yeah, she picked her up and got to ride in. And actually, the teacher she's talking about was my kindergarten teacher and was Missouri rural teacher of the year one year, a phenomenal teacher. But yeah, she got to pick up and her kids got to listen to her old teacher in the car tell stories and like.
No, she brought out.
Yes, I forgot this part. Yes, you're right.
This is unbelievable.
Well, she was getting ready to sub that day. She passed her former teacher's on the side of the road's flat tire, so she stops, picks her up, and she gets in her bag of goodies. And pulls out what this elementary counselor had wrote when she was in first grade. Yeah. She had kept a sample of her work that long and read it to her own children that are in like fourth and first grade. So she kept that stuff. Yes.
It was unbelievable.
Right.
I know Mrs. Hicks, she's unbelievable anyways. I didn't have her, but I saw that. I was like, but that's it right there. I was like, those are the stories that I want to see more of, because your social media is going to pick up on the things that you like or what you're interested in. I'm like, that's the stuff that I want to see in here, because we all have those stories of things that go on, maybe not pulling out work from 20 years ago, but in the same sense, I'm like, we all have those great things. I'm like, and people need to see that. Like, it can't always be the financial or the hardships of all of this. Like, there are great things, and I think it just needs to be focused on.
And it's just like anything else in life. If you pull out the more positive things to show, I mean, I feel like you get twice the benefit from those things. So, but that's also, I mean, we're all parents here. How often do we probably take the time to put on social media something thankful that a teacher has done for our own children? We're all a little guilty of that. Not, I mean, I think that's what people probably don't realize on social media, like as a parent posting something that's not positive about a teacher or about a school, they probably really don't realize the impact they have. I can't tell you how many teachers, I walk in and I see their heartbreak when they have read that post, and they may not know if it's about them or not, but they have that kid in class and they're like, was that about me? And the heartbreak they cause a teacher there. A parent has no idea, but I'm on the other side. I'm probably as guilty as anyone for not posting about those positives that my kids are experiencing in some classrooms. Just super thankful for, the things that, all my 3 kids have different personalities, which I'm sure all of yours do, and taking the benefits of those and
maybe that can be kind of that challenge to not just teachers, but parents too, is just put out there those great things that the teachers are doing for your kids and the difference that they are making, because it makes a difference for us. We were out at my old team that I used to work with in 5th grade. We all went out for a little Christmas get together, and
awkward. I wasn't invited.
Okay. You weren't a 5th grade teacher. You didn't invite me to Friendsgiving. Remember, Sean was really upset about that.
Man, I forgot.
Actually, the boys also heard and they go, "Did you go?" And I was like, "No." They're like, "What?" And I'm like, "It's okay. It's for that building." But we're out there, and I think that's the other part. Maybe it's a benefit that people don't realize is the how you get all these different connections to things. We were at Hinoti, and our chef, he's making food and asking what we're doing, and we're like, "Yeah, we teach," and we told him where we taught and everything. And he's like, "Hey, do you know so and so?" "Yeah, actually, we do. My son's in their class right now." And it was just a great connection to have with somebody I did not have a connection for. Well, then at the end of all of our meal and stuff, it was really nice. The people, and they didn't say a lot. We were the loud ones at the table. But whenever they were about to leave, the group that was sitting with us, they came over and a lady just said, "Hey, thank you for what you guys do in the classroom." And she doesn't live in our town or anything. And I just thought that even that small thing meant a lot to me. 'Cause I'm like, you don't know what I do, but you are appreciating that. And I just thought that's something that people also don't realize. And as being an educator, those small little interactions, just saying thank you for what you do for our kids really does mean a lot. So
I think in my building at North, we have a great parent lighthouse, and they shower us with gifts all the time. And I've never experienced it because we've never had my other buildings people like that. And it is a blessing. They all the time are just thanking us, and I don't know if realize how much we appreciate that, or I do, because they're always just we appreciate you doing this, and I think that. Just a little bit of token.
It doesn't take a lot.
It doesn't take a lot for us to be but they did 12 days of Christmas where they made sure we had something. Yeah. They did school supplies one day, which was great. You got just little things like that to just really makes your heart feel fulfilled, I guess. And I think having a positive building, and just my principal that they always try to just keep that helps much.
I think it makes a big difference.
Just staying in education, that makes people want to stay when you appreciate, and I tell her
appreciation.
Yeah.
And I will say also, and I think this is for teachers, I think we have to be careful not get trapped and be a negative, because I will tell you, there's nothing worse. I cannot live in negativity. I probably live in la la land, but I do. And I'm not saying that's always good too, but I cannot function in negativity. Yeah. But there is nothing worse than when you're with other teachers and they're just constantly negative and never happy and never about this. And they don't, we do a lot at our school too. Yeah. And I heard teachers we'll gripe about certain things we did. And I'm like, I think we have to be careful, because there is a lot of things wrong with teaching. That's hard. And it's not easy. I think all those things but if we dwell on those, we don't realize who
else is hearing it too.
It does, and how we're seeping to other people.
Well, it's contagious.
It's contagious,
and also to kids.
Exactly.
I built I've been this positive. It's been great. You can just feel the stress. I've also been in the negative building, and it's you feel down about yourself. And I said, just one little positive thing changes.
It does.
It just changes everything.
And you can nip it.
You can, and I think you need to be that positive influence if you're building or somebody around you. Think of things, try to be positive with them about stuff. No, not saying I'm always positive about it.
Nobody's going to.
But I think it makes a difference when people around you have that spark in them too.
And I think you have to know you can't be negative all the time, and that you have to turn things around and nip the negativity, because if not, you can that's all you see.
Well, I think it's the idea of check yourself.
Yeah.
If all of your interactions with your coworkers or admin or anything are in that negative world, or your kids, your students, you need to check yourself and go, okay, what can I do different in this situation? Yeah. Because we had the saying, what's in your boat? What are the things that you can control versus the things on the outside? I'm like, I can control these things and I can make these things happy. And so I think that's
one thing I say a lot in my office when the kids come in is, I joke about, I don't have magic band-aids to fix everything, and you are only in control of you.
Yeah.
You really are.
Yeah.
Circle of control.
That's right. We say circle of control.
Yeah. Circle. I even told my own kids, is this
circle? I do too. I say it to my husband.
Yes.
Circle of control. Let it go. Let it go, Dave.
So what about we've been talking about like new people coming into education. What would be your best advice for somebody coming into education? Maybe it is that like student teacher that you have come in, or a practicum student. I mean, I'll even start us on this because one of the things I notice, it feels like, is that people, because they start thinking about the financial aspect, they get out. And I know you all are out of the teaching world, but you were also there for a while too. But they get out because and go into like admin or something because they are thinking about, I can finally make money in education. I had a practicum student. So again, practicum, not even student teaching yet. And she comes in once a week, and I started asking her, like, so what are you kind of thinking you want to do afterwards? Where you plan to teach it? She says, well, I think I'm going to go ahead and get my master's and just teach a year and then become a principal. And I looked at her and I said, one of the things I want you to recognize is, why are you getting into education? I said, because if it is to make money, you need to go do something else. I said, this is not going to be the place where you're going to make a bunch of money. I said, is it because of the kids? Because your interaction with your kids, if that's the most important thing for you, you need to think about what your role is in that. And she was like, oh, well, I never thought about that. And she goes, that makes a lot of sense though. Because I mean, we know my husband went into admin for 6 years, and there's a lot of great things he learned from that, but he missed the positive interaction with kids. And somebody has to be an admin, right? Yeah. I mean, and we want good, and we have,
well, my master's is in administration.
Yeah.
I mean, but one of the reasons I have not chose to pursue that is because, the administrators I have a great deal of respect for, but for me and how I need to fill my cup is, I need that interaction with the kids. And the interactions, I mean, I guess the great thing about in my position, I get a little bit of, as I can be the sassy one when I need to be, but I can also be the loving one, I have the best of both worlds, because I'm not just, my interactions are not all bad with kids. I have a lot of positive interactions with kids. And so for me, I'm not ready to not have that anymore. I want that interaction with the kids that I have. I feel like I have the best of both worlds because I get both. And so that's where somebody has to do it. Absolutely. But you have to know what fills your cup too. And so for me, I need that with the kids, what I have now.
And I feel like you need to be in the classroom for a while before you're administrative, because you need to know what it's like to be a teacher. You know what to work with kids, how they put on and I even think even after you're in as a principal, you should go back into a classroom a couple times a year to remember what it's like. Because even for me, because I feel like I have the best of both worlds, because I get to be like, I told you to stop, and I mean it, right? But then I love you,
yes, right.
So I do feel like I kind of get both of that too, but I'm glad because I still get to go in every kindergarten classroom and all classrooms and still teach a lesson. And I think it's good for me because I get to still realize how hard that job is. Right. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
Because each job has a different hardness. There's different things.
And perspective.
Yes.
I tell my high school kids that all the time is you've got to see whatever your situation they come in. I'm like, have you looked at it from the other perspective?
Yes, because there's always two sides.
There's two sides always,
And that even goes with people harping on their admin. Yeah. Honestly, because my husband was in that for a while, I know some of the things that maybe other people don't recognize with it. And so when people start saying things, I'm like, okay, just think about it from this side of it for a minute, because it's easy for us our
and sometimes we don't see the whole everything because they can't tell us everything that they know.
Well, I guess I kind of jumped away from the best advice for people going into it. Let me pause this because it's a 20. It just helps us save it. So going back to best advice for people, what would you say?
I think one of the things that I guess there's a couple of different ways to look at it. Like as far as someone going into education, one of the things I think about is kind of know your areas, like know if that's something that you could be a part of long term. Yeah. I always felt like I wanted to teach second grade. I was going to be an awesome second grade teacher. I subbed, and the kids are like, "That's not how Mrs. So-and-so does it," and I'm like, of course, I'm a little ornery, maybe, and I would be like, "Do I look like Mrs. So-and-so?" That was one of my things. So I think as far as in preparing for that, is know if that, go and have that experience, just like, job shadow, go and see if those things, now that's not going to give you the full experience,
but at least you have enough.
But go in and look and see if those things are, and if you feel like it's truly, that's what your calling is and your heart is there, then there's going to be a lot of naysayers and people telling you why not to go into education. But, I can tell you, I haven't missed out on, there is nothing my kids have done that I have not been able to be a part of. Maybe a few classroom parties, maybe a few of those. But as far as like I know my son had a basketball game. It got moved up. Like the snowstorm was coming. It was districts. They moved the game up till 1:00 in the afternoon.
Oh man.
I mean, 1:00 in the afternoon. Okay. So I look around and I'm not going to miss. No. And so, my administration let me go, I guess, to supervise, but they let me leave to go. So, I mean, like I have not had to miss on some of my kids' things because of that. I will also, since I'm the only one sitting here that is a 4-day week, plug that.
That's bragging.
I will brag a little bit about that. I will say that a 4-day week, as far as from what I have seen from my staff, it has been such a blessing for them as far as that extra day.
Of course it is.
It's awesome. It is. We do. I am bragging, and I will say that
you have the right to brag
for my staff. That has been awesome. I felt helped take a little bit of that negativity out of the equation. And I will say that my test scores at my school have not shown any downside to that. So I will plug that a little bit.
I will take it.
The 4-day week.
Keep going.
Bring you back on that episode.
That's right. So anyway, I do think that for my district has been a great positive.
Yeah. Oh, best advice. I don't know. But I just think like coming into education, you have to know you have to have that heart for it. And like Kelly said, we always need subs. So you can always come experience,
what classroom's like. And realize that if it's your own, it will be slightly different than when you're coming into your own.
Yes. But just, I think you have to have that heart for it and realize that when you come in, you also have like a family, like, teaching some of my best friends are teachers, they
some come great people.
There are some great, that people that, have just become part of my family. And like a couple of like 3 of my teacher friends, you guys, I know are their aunts, but she has side aunts. My daughter.
Oh, well.
Yeah, she does. She calls them her aunts. Her aunts at school, but they take care of my kids.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's also an upside no one talks about is that you have another family that, how many times other than she didn't invite you to her friend's Thanksgiving?
Yeah,
but
school. I'm gonna have one just so I can invite her. Make it a night.
Oh my gosh!
And I think my probably best advice is always find the good in that hard kid, your job of the day. And with this job that I had this year, I started I call it my silver lining. And sometimes something good happens, I write it down because in my position with behavior, you feel like you're a rock star or you're the worst person at this job. I mean, there's no moment, but like I constantly write down those little things because we forget. And I think if you're going to teaching, you have to find the good in that tricky kid that you just have to constantly, sometimes you have to write it down so you can go back. And I just think that's the important thing is to always do that.
Yeah. Well, if we always could have wrote down some of the stuff kids said, like I wish
me too.
Right.
Write down everything they said.
Yes. Especially in kindergarten.
Yes.
They said that to me today. Oh, that's great.
I love it when you bring those things up to parents and they're like, that's not exactly what happened. And you're like,
yeah. I've got a teacher. Well, maybe I shouldn't share that story. I will. A teacher friend though that had a kid come in. They were like, how was spring break or whatever? And the kid was like, my parents drank a lot. And the kid went home and told their parents, like, I told the teacher you guys drank a lot. And then mom, like, in messaging the teacher was like, so we didn't, we're adults. Not like, she's like, we're not those people either. So it's funny. You never know what the kids will say. All right. So last one here is going to be, what are your best teacher stories? I threw this one on here.
Oh, best teacher stories.
So it could be funny. It could be like, oh, goodness.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I wish you would tell me that.
Yeah, I know. Best teacher stories. Oh my.
I decided I added.
I don't. Yeah. Gosh, I can think of a time whenever a kid was in a little bit of trouble, and typically, would help my principal with those kind of things, and the girl was very upset, and I actually think she was a middle schooler, but she was in our like I said, a rural school. So middle school and some of my middle schools come to the high school. We're on the same campus and they're, able to, our buildings connect. So they were able to walk over and take some classes in the high school, which is kind of neat because they get to experience some of those high school teachers before they get there. But anyway, so this particular student had been in a little bit of trouble and we were trying to get her to the car, and the closer she got, I felt like I should be the one to go up and try to talk, being the counselor and all. And she had already yelled at the other school counselor a little bit. So when I came closer, she told me she was going, and we're talking 7th or 8th grader. She's like, you get any closer and I'm going to lick you. And I said, all right, well, okay, I'm coming closer because I'm going to help you get to the car. And she just kept telling me she was going to lick me. And she didn't, but I didn't act like I was scared either. Cause I told her, I was like, well, my baby has thrown up all over me. I've had poop on me. Like, it'll be okay. Like, I'm
the one. Like, God, please don't let
I'm like, this could be, she might spit on me. I don't know. But the other counselor and I worked together. Yeah. Well, and and there was nice words that were very descriptive to go along with some of the other things she said. We did get her to the car. We did get her to the car. I've had kids. We are on a major highway. We're on, a major highway. We've had kids that have tried to leave school. That always, poses some interesting things when they're walking. I years ago had a kid that ran across the highway and hid behind hay bales because rural area again. So, my principal at the time she said, I'm sending the cops to get him. And so the cops went out there and you could see kids running behind hay bales. There were 2 of them running behind hay bales and the cop car was chasing them through the field. So, there's things like that happen. But tomorrow's a new day and you love them again. Yeah. So I guess if I had time to think, I could probably come up with several stories, but
I think one of my favorite is, so I know most people don't like lunch duty, but I liked going in. I loved going in at lunch to see my kids. And not only that, I always like to get snacks. And so one kid always would give me Oreos. Like his mom would pack Oreos just for me. I thought that was very nice.
Have you been doing that?
Yeah, I feel like Ozark North, you're failing.
Yeah. So, we joke about it. Some kids be like, don't touch, and then they'd actually end up just giving me food.
You're stealing kids' food.
Pretty much. Wow. So
you're the bully.
I'm the lunchroom bully. Right. So I would just do that with my old students. I'd come in. They would feed me, which was so nice of them all, And so that was always the joke that Mrs. Towe would come in and, steal kids' lunches. Well, so one day I went back to my room after dropping my kids off at lunch, and I could not find my own lunch. And of course, I'm kind of like Jill, used to prank some in my other building. I'm pretty good right now. I haven't done very many pranks. But anyway, I kept looking for lunch, and I finally looked across the hallway at my friend. I said, where is my lunch? Who's been in here? Like, who is pranking me? Like, this is... And she's like, no one's been in there. So I went to look in my kids' backpacks. And I just had a shake for lunch, and inside of on the side of the backpack was my shake. Ooh. And so I had to tell everybody I found my lunch. One of the kids stole my actual lunch. They stole your lunch.
Your lunch stolen.
I got first grader. First grader stole my lunch that day. Of course, everybody thought it was hilarious. And so when I went to pick my kids up, I had my shake, drinking, and go, look what I found. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, I took a picture to show that it was in your backpack. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, lies. You're making that up.
You planted it on there.
I know, right? And so I think that, I always talk about, I've had my lunch stolen by a first grader. And of course, everybody thinks that's hilarious.
That's good.
That is good.
Well, sisters, I'm so
fun.
Yeah. See, they weren't so dangerous.
No, you weren't. And you know what? You're as nice as they
are. Mm-hmm. Well, my little plug would be that, being the youngest of 3 girls, and she added that in because she wants to make sure everybody knows we're the oldest.
She wants to make sure.
Well, what I wanted to say was that, people talk about looking up to their siblings or whatever. And I know that for me, both of these these women, were really good examples for me. And it did make a difference. I mean, whatever decisions they were making, I was definitely looking at what they were doing and seeing what they were doing in their life. And anyway, it made my life easier seeing what they had went through in different areas. And I just appreciate them. They're good ladies. So
appreciate you.
Yeah. Oh, look, she touched me.
We might get a hug before it's
over.
No,
you never know.
So. She said no.
Yeah, she said no. Knock it down. All right. Well.
Oh, well, look. Sorry. I got so excited about the hug.
The possibilities.
Okay. This is Listen.
Teacher Chatter.
This is problem.
And Jill.
And have a great week.